You betcha. Well, first, yeah, thanks for having me here. It's actually, I don't know if you guys know, it's Student Press Freedom Day. There's lots of different events going on all around the country, so I'm glad to be with you today. And since we're a nice and small, informal group here, we're going to keep this pretty informal as well. I do have a PowerPoint that we'll go through, but certainly, if questions come up or if you have comments or anything, jump in, interrupt, catch my attention, whatever. That is totally cool. We'll probably have some time at the end for questions as well. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to get rid of my picture just because it bothers the heck out of me to watch myself chat. So I'm going to do that here. All right, can you guys see the screen?
Yep, all good.
Cool. All right, cool. So, okay, so we're going to talk today about this whole kind of new topic that we've added to our list here about covering protests. It really is, 2020 has been a year, or was a year like no other, and on so many fronts, but definitely just in terms of, what it is to be a journalist and some of the risks that are involved. I mean, that we've never had a time, I think, certainly since I've been doing media law, which is about 30 years now, where we've had, the scale of attacks on journalists, just basically doing their job. So this is a very relevant topic, unfortunately, right now. For those of you that don't know about us, I'm just going to give you a little quick spiel about the Student Press Law Center. We're a nonprofit organization. We are based in Washington, D.C. I'm actually out in the West Coast in the other Washington state, but our whole reason for being in business is to provide legal help and information to high school and college student journalists. And my specific job at the center is to man our hotline. And so I encourage you, if anything, during the course of the year, if you have legal questions that come up, certainly visit our website first, because probably most of your questions are going to be answered there. But if you have something more particular that you'd like to talk with me about on a one-on-one basis, go to our little website or go to our hotline, and you can either set up a phone consult with me or just send me an email. And we're going to talk about covering protests today, but we do handle pretty much every sort of media law issue that comes up. So libel and censorship, unfortunately, remains a big topic. Access to public records, meetings, that sort of thing. Again, don't think you're bugging us. That's why we're here if questions like that arise. So covering protests. So there's a group out there called the U.S. Press Freedom Tracker group. They said that there's been close to 1,000 different aggressions, as that they described them on journalists this year. That means, they classify aggressions as attacks, arrests, having equipment searched or seized or damaged. And this includes student journalists who have been targeted and arrested, tear gassed, chased down, flash bombed by police. We actually, as part of our Student Press Freedom Day today, we were talking with some journalists at different been involved with protests, and yeah, just talking about what is it like to be flash bombed. I mean, it's pretty eye opening when most of the time your work involves covering your school board meetings or the whatever sort of trends are happening on your campus. To actually be flash bombed is something new for a lot of student journalists and a lot of journalists in general. So today we're going to talk about just, kind of knowing your rights, knowing what your rights are, but also helping you understand, just knowing your rights won't keep those rights from being violated. So we're also going to, talk about some of the practical things to do when that might happen. So journalists' rights are really the same as every citizen's rights. I mean, we don't have it. We're not in a special category for protection in most cases. There are a couple exceptions to that, such as when it comes to like protecting sources and things like that. There are a couple special laws on the books that just apply to journalists. But for the most part, and particularly, we're talking about protest coverage, our rights are the same as everybody else's, no more and no less. And that's important to keep in mind. So, we don't don't, as journalists, we don't have a license to jaywalk or trespass on private property or block automobile traffic. We're are susceptible to the same laws that apply to everybody else. But there are, again, some principles within the First Amendment that give you the right to news gather and to take photos and to record videos. One of the things is filming police and filming protests happening in public is protected speech. There've been, a growing number of cases that talk about, you do have the right to pull out your cell phone, and as long as you're not being disruptive, you have the right, to film from a safe distance where you're out of the way. Um, when it comes to that, your strongest legal protections are going to be when you're in what we call public forums or public spaces, places like sidewalks or streets, parks, most of the places where the actual demonstrations, the protests are actually taking place. If they're in the public, if they're accessible to the general public, they're typically going to be treated as public forums. And when you're in those forums, you have pretty strong protection when it comes to recording what's happening. Um, uh, yeah. So like I said, I've been this last year has been a year unlike any other when it comes to journalists being in danger, and as a result of that, I mean, I probably sat in on a dozen or more different Zoom seminars and other things, listening to reporters talk about their experience, listening to other media lawyers and law enforcement people talk about things that can be done. And so what I've kind of put together here is just a list of tips that have kind of resulted from those discussions, and I've kind of broken them down into what happens, what you should do before the protest, what happens during the protest, and the things you might want to do after the protest. So before the protest, first thing, just make sure that people know that you're going. That means making sure your editor, your roommate, family members, significant others, advisors, whoever, just make sure. Preferably, it's going to be somebody local, but just make sure that they know that there is going to be a protest, that you're going to go there covering it as a journalist, and just give them as much information as you can about when they might expect you back. Never go out alone. You always work with a buddy. It looks like all my numbers got screwed up here. They're all number one. I guess they're all that important. But you never want to go out alone, especially when you're a photographer or a videographer. I mean, you're staring through your viewfinder for much of the time. You're not as aware. You don't have that situational awareness necessarily of what's going on, all around you. So that's when it's important to have, that producer, that editor, that other journalist there that's with you, that sticks with you, and that is there, has your back. Identify in advance who your emergency contact is going to be. You don't want to be scrambling for that sort of information, when the police are actually putting you in handcuffs. So decide who you're going to call if you run into trouble. Could be your editor, could be your advisor, could be the phone number of a local criminal attorney. A number of the reporters that we talked with said, they would actually write that number, name and number, on their arm with a Sharpie, because once you're arrested, they're going to take away your phone, they're going to take away your equipment. So having your lawyers or your editor's number programmed in your phone is going to do you a whole lot of good there. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to write our number, the SPLC's number, down. I mean, we're not licensed in New York and a bunch of the different states, and so we probably aren't the best first call, and maybe sometimes your only call that you get to make. Save contacting us for a little bit later. Bring your safety equipment. We're talking here about mask, goggles, a helmet, water, just some of the basic things there. The other thing that came up a fair share was reporters talking about how important it was to disable some of the things on your phone, in particular, things like your phone's fingerprint scanner. There's actually some interesting law out there, some developing law that talks about how while police may be able to have you put your phone, your finger on your phone to open it up, or hold the phone to your face to open it up, if those are features you've enabled on your phone, they cannot compel you to type in your PIN or to disclose the PIN to them. That's actually a Fifth Amendment violation. So, you know, kind of a weird distinction they've drawn there, but that is a distinction they've drawn. So, you know, going back to the old-fashioned having to type in a PIN is probably a good thing to do and to prepare yourself for before you actually get out in the field. So during the protest, now, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the film from CNN involving Omar Jimenez, who was arrested for CNN, but I'm just going to play, for those of you that haven't, I'm going to play a little bit here from that, if I have it. Oh, I think I might have gotten rid of it. Just a sec, let me see if I can find it. Sorry about that. I had it all teed up, and I think I might have gotten rid of it. Here it is. I'm sorry, I don't know why this is not sharing here. It's not showing up on my screen.
We saw it for a second on our screen.
You did? Okay, well, maybe it is on your screen. I'm sorry. Just a sec, please.
No problem.
Can you see it there?
Yes, we can, but there is no audio though. So if I think you have your headphones plugged in. If you can plug them out, just like a quick minute, just we can go hear the audio. That'd be good.
Can you hear there?
Could you just make it a little louder?
Louder.
We're speaking with State Patrol right now.
Perfect.
Just a second, guys. We can move back to where you'd like. We can move back to where you'd like here. We are live on the air at the moment. This is the four of us. We are one team. Just put us back where you want us. We are getting out of your way, so just let us know. Wherever you'd want us, we will go. We were just getting out of your way when you were advancing through the intersection. So just let us know and we got you. And this is a scene here playing out in Minneapolis. This is part of the advanced police presence that we saw come over the course of really minutes when the local police showed up at the fire department, or with the fire department, I should say, on that building we showed you that was burning. This is among the State Patrol unit that was advancing up the street, saying and scattering the protesters at that point for people to clear the area. And so we walked away. I'm sorry? Okay. Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest? Okay. You are arrested in live on CNN. We've been told you before that we are with CNN.
If you're just tuning in, you are watching our correspondent, Omar Jimenez, being arrested by state police in Minnesota. We're not sure why our correspondent is being arrested.
Hang on 1 second, Allison. Let's listen into what these officers are saying. That is an American television reporter, Omar Jimenez, being led away by police officers. He clearly identified himself as a reporter. He was respectfully explaining to the state police that our CNN team was there and moving away as they would request. And then for some reason, he was just taken in police custody live on television. I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, Allison. I just wanted to hear.
So it goes on for a little bit there, and I just want to show at the end here, just show you the value of a good cameraman. Camera person, hold on. Watch what happens here. They actually start. They go and arrest him.
I'm being arrested now. I gotta be looking up at the camera.
Watch how he puts the camera. To make sure it's all captured on camera.
If you're just tuning in, this is our camera crew, our CNN camera crew, being arrested by the Minneapolis State Police. We believe the camera is now on the ground because our cameraman has been handcuffed. Our correspondent, Omar Jimenez, was also led away in handcuffs, as was his producer. They were standing where they were told to stand.
Let me get this all squared away here in a sec. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me again?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I don't know if any of you have seen that before, but it's good. You're probably going to start seeing it in your media law classes for years to come, because it is almost a textbook example of a reporter and his team, the camera person in particular, doing everything right. I mean, they did exactly the sorts of things that I'm going to tell you to do, and that their editors, were telling them to do. But sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, but it's a stark example of what journalists have been facing recently. So during the protests, so one of the things that he did, you saw very quickly and very clearly, they identified themselves. They had their CNN press credentials there. They made sure that police had no way of claiming that they didn't know who they were. So you don't need to have credentials to cover a protest, but it certainly can be helpful. Obviously, as we just saw, they don't shield you from arrest, but depending on the officers, they may allow you, certain privileges that you wouldn't otherwise have. So again, you don't need permission from officers simply to be in a public place, but you don't even need to let them know you're a journalist, although it can be helpful. Some of the reporters that I talked to this summer, they talked about how important it was to them. They thought, before things got heated, they got to the protest scene, they kind of got the lay of the land. But one of the things they said they made it a point to do was to find out who was in charge of law enforcement, find the police chief, whoever it was that was on site, and introduce themselves, at least to let them know who they were, just kind of give them a heads up that they're on the site, and just kind of say, if you have problems, let me know. Just kind of doing a little bit of homework ahead of time, I think can be very helpful. Present as a neutral observer. You want to make sure that you don't go out looking like a protester. So if you're going to a BLM protest, you don't want to be wearing a BLM t-shirt or anything. So you want to present as a reporter normally would. One of the things you want to do too is upload your photos regularly, and back up your data. I mean, I think that it can be a little bit problematic in some of these scenes. We heard from reporters saying how their internet coverage got really, really spotty at times. I think just because of the mass of people there. But to the degree that you can, making sure that when you take a photo, you're sending that back to your newsroom, or you're getting it up on the cloud as quickly as you can. I think that's always, a good thing. Darn it. One of the things, even though police can't legally force you to show them your work, or certainly they're not supposed to delete photos, it doesn't mean they won't try and do it anyway. So again, that's another reason to make sure that you get those photos backed up and into the hands of folks that can use them. If you're arrested, just realize that your camera probably will also be seized. They're supposed to return all your equipment untouched back to you once you're actually out of jail, but that doesn't always happen. I mean, there have been a number of cases of journalists, cameramen getting back their work and finding that their photos are missing. So again, just making sure that you are continuously. Excuse me just a sec. Okay, sorry, working home sometimes. And then finally, yeah, staying alert, making sure that you are aware of what's going on around you. Notice that the crowd is getting tense or loud. Notice that there seems to be an increase in police present. Notice that they're starting to get into formation or something like that. That usually means things are about to happen. When that happens, always be mindful of where the escape route is. Consider, what you're going to do if violence breaks out. Have a game plan. I think it's always important before you go into a scene, to have a game plan about what you're there for. Are you there to talk to people, to get their stories about why they're there? Are you willing to stay around if there is violence? Are you willing to be in the thick of things and to continue snapping photos? All those sorts of things will dictate exactly what your what your actions are going to be once things start to heat up. Once the police come around, it's again important, I think, to immediately identify yourself as a member of the press. Again, as we just saw, it may or may not help you. Put your hands where they can see them. Show your press credentials. Stay calm, polite. Don't escalate. They're one of the things they're doing. I mean, they're looking for reasons to arrest you. So don't give them one. Make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do to stay out of trouble to the extent that you can. Recording any police encounter, filming, as I talked about earlier, is a protected activity. You can film anything you can see in plain view, especially police, doing their things, conducting their activities. I sometimes get asked the question, what to do if an officer asks me to stop recording. You don't have to. The police do not have a right to tell you unless there's some sort of very concrete reason they can give you as to why your recording is somehow escalating things or changing the scene itself. If they don't have that sort of reason, and that's a very rare thing, they don't have the right to tell you to stop recording. I tell folks, do whatever you can to keep your film, to keep your tape running, because that creates a record, and that's that's where you have proof. I mean, Omar's story is being told now because he was on air, and he, there's lots and lots of people that are able to see what was happening with him. Again, when you're lawfully present in a public space, you can photograph and record anything in plain view as long as you're not interfering with the officer's duties. If you're arrested, so one of the things that, and this is just a life lesson in general, if you are ever involved with police, one of the first things you always want to do is ask them if you are under arrest. That's a really, really important legal question, and it really determines a lot about what your rights are. It also determines what their responsibilities are as law enforcement. Basically, you are under arrest if you are not free to go. If you are not under arrest, you're free to go. And so asking that question, am I under arrest, and getting a very clear answer, no matter what you're doing, reporter or anything, is always a good thing to do. Legally, they cannot detain you without a reasonable suspicion that you've committed a crime or about to commit a crime. This is something that the Fourth Amendment dictates. It tells you what police can and can't do when it comes to intruding on your privacy and your personal effects as a journalist. You don't have to consent to be searched, either for your person or for your things. They can pat you down if they believe that you're carrying a weapon, but that's as much as they can do, usually without a search warrant or a subpoena. There is a law called the Privacy Protection Act that also can kick in and limits their ability to search your person and search your working materials. After you're arrested, you're not going to have your phone. Like I said, so you're not going to have access to phone numbers, documents, press passes. So try to find out who it is that it's arresting you. Find out, is it the state patrol? Is it the city police? So that you can pass that information on as quickly as you can, so people know where to find you. Try to get the officer's name or badge number. If you have your camera out, focus in quickly on that badge number and the officer's name. There's this thing called dispersal orders it's a police kind of tactic that's been used for a while. Basically, a dispersal order is supposed to be a kind of a last resort sort of thing that police use. But basically, if police see criminal activity, and they're supposed to actually see the activity taking place, once they've observed that criminal activity taking place, they can issue a dispersal order that just says, hey, you need to get out of here and get out of here now. And if you don't get out of here, they can start engaging in mass arrests. And that's where, a lot of journalists have found themselves trapped. Now, there are a couple things with these dispersal orders. And again, another reason to keep your cameras going and your tape recorders going so you can record all these things. But they're only supposed to issue these dispersal orders if there's a clear and present danger of a riot or unlawful activity. There has to be some reasonable opportunity given to you to comply with their demand that you leave, after the order is given. They can't just say, you need to leave and we're going to arrest you if you don't. And then 20 seconds later, they start making arrests. There has to be this reasonable opportunity to comply. They actually need to, you need to be able to have heard where to go and how long you have. And so again, that's where the tape recording can come in helpful. They should be saying to you more than just move. They need to actually, provide some sort of reasonable direction so that you know how to comply. Once a dispersal order is issued, though, I mean, your alarm bells need to start going off. You need to be very cautious about resisting officers in these moments. I mean, realize that at this point they're probably pretty annoyed. Things have gotten to a point where they're feeling they need to take this sort of action, and they're trying to get rid of people. I mean, so they really are looking for reasons and looking for people to kind of move out of the way, arrest and move out of the way. You want to be civil, not antagonistic. You want to make sure your hands are visible. You want to tell them you're complying. Where do we want us to move? Be as helpful as you can, and again, keep those cameras running. So after the protest, this is when we do want you to contact us. One, we want to know what's happening just so we can keep track of things and let folks know, that these issues are occurring and they are a problem. But this is also where if you need to find an attorney, that's where we might be able to give you a hand. So give us a ring, let us know what's going on. And then, make sure that you're, memorializing what took place. So hopefully, again, you've kept the camera running, you have a document that way, but it's also a good time to just write down, when things are fresh in your memory, what happened, what the police did, what you did, what sort of equipment might have been involved, what sort of, images or things do you expect should be on your equipment. Just making sure you're having that, memorializing that pretty soon after it happened. That's actually evidence that can be used later on. As long as it's a contemporaneous sort of writing, it happened around the same time as the event actually happened, it can be very helpful in court. And I think, yeah, that was the main part of my presentation here. I'll just stop and take any questions or anything we might have. There we go. Yeah, any questions that come up or on this or any other sort of topics that you're dealing with?
Iman, and you can go.
Hi, okay. So I'm not American, I'm Indian, and I feel like there's always a lot of anxiety about being international and getting into any sort of, problem with the law. So could you just explain how that would work out if I were to, get into some sort of trouble?
I wish I had, magic sort of information to pass on to you, but you're right. I mean, that can be, a trigger point with law enforcement, with other people in the actual protest. Sometimes you're targeted. Uh, I mean, yeah, I don't know that I have any particularly special advice other than some of the things we just talked about, making sure that you have good credentials, up-to-date credentials available, having a buddy there, somebody that has your back that can, hopefully explain and step in and provide some assistance, some support. Uh, I mean, you have the same rights as any other, as an American journalist, a citizen journalist, have to do your job while you're here. So yeah, but it's tough. I certainly I think there's a reason that Omar might have been singled out. I mean, he was asking the same questions that a lot of his counterparts weren't directly targeted, but certainly he was, and we have seen that in other places where the minority reporters are the ones that are kind of finding themselves in the most difficulty. Like I said, I don't think I answered your question or gave you any real clear advice, but other than, yeah, just to follow this, the stuff that we were talking about. Yeah,
All right, Nikhil.
So is it like recommended that when you go and cover protests, you have someone like besides a buddy, but if you have like a bondsman that you're ready to like call in case, like is that like something you need to worry about, or you should just like if you had to like deal with that, it would be like later, like should you be prepared with someone?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, I don't know that each individual reporter does, but I think that's certainly a job of editors to understand, who it is that they will call, if one of their reporters has trouble. So yeah, getting in touch with a local criminal attorney, probably criminal attorney is the one that's going to be most helpful in these cases, just because you're actually arrested and in jail typically is the problem that you're having. So yeah, having that person's name available, and that, and the attorney's going to have things like bail bondsmen and things like that probably um, all set. I mean, one of the things that I didn't put on my list is one of the reporters said, make sure you have some quarters in your pocket, because the jail phones, you don't have your cell phone, and the jail phones are actually pay phones, and so having some quarters in your pocket can be helpful. Um, the other thing I'll mention too, and I should add this actually to my presentation, is make sure that if you are in jail, they're going to put a lot of paperwork in front of you. Some of those things are not going to be helpful to you if you actually sign them. So I think that's the point at which, especially as a journalist, there will be attorneys there will be lawyers and counsel that are available to come to your aid. So I would probably make sure. Probably not to sign a lot of those documents until you've actually had somebody go over them with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lauren?
Yeah, so during the January 6th riot at the Capitol, we saw video footage of cameras and other journalism equipment being destroyed. And I'm just wondering, what rights do journalists have to get back their equipment, or if it's been damaged, or if there's been like significant loss of material? What rights do we have to repossess it or get compensation for something like that?
Pretty much the same rights, again, as any other citizen when it comes to somebody else destroying your property. Unfortunately, the most valuable thing on our cameras and on our phones and other equipment, is the actual content, which really we can't put any sort of price on. But the equipment itself, I mean, so the people in Washington, D.C., luckily, again, there were cameras running. And so they're, I've heard that they have actually, pulled a couple of the people in that were, using the baseball bats on the equipment. And so, yeah, they will be getting bills, in addition to having criminal charges filed against them. They'll also be getting bills, I'm sure, from the various news organizations demanding compensation. So, But yeah, unfortunately, there's not. And again, it's not really anything particular for journalists. It's more just the same rights everybody else had. Now there are some rules if law enforcement people are the ones that are coming in and taking your equipment. There's this thing called the Privacy Protection Act, that I mentioned, that actually does provide some means for getting that stuff back as well. Yes, ma'am. Jordan.
So with the one-party consent and two-party consent laws, as far as recording goes, like let's say you're covering a protest where it's like a two-party consent law in place, would that law still be like relevant in a protest, or like would it still be able to like record like what's happening?
Yeah, so two-party laws are really mainly for situations where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. So when you're on a phone call, there's that expectation that there is a certain degree of privacy here. But yeah, when you're in a public setting, certainly in a protest sort of setting, yeah, you don't have to worry about that. But great question. Yeah.
So I know that like reporters for like our TV station and also like our radio station, they aren't given press credentials when they like go out and they cover protests. So like what would happen in that case if they were like detained by police?
Is there a reason that you guys don't have any sort of press pass or anything like that? I mean, really, there's nothing magical or official necessarily to them. They just, they basically, you can just do something on, an InDesign or something like that. I think like SPJ, I think they do have like a sample press pass or something that you can, a template that you can use. But yeah, I would definitely do that. I mean, again, it's not a magic sort of key to get out of jail or anything like that, but it can be helpful. Some police, some law enforcement officials are going to respect it more than others. But yeah, definitely, I would do that. It's one of the things that came up. We would always, in the past, we would tell our reporters, when you go out, have something that clearly identifies you as a member of press, not just your press pass, around your thing, but maybe, if you're wearing a helmet, press on the helmet, or a jacket or something that says press. That information, that advice has kind of changed. A lot of the reporters, I mean, for the first time, they said that this was, these BLM protests in particular, they felt targeted. I mean, once people saw that they were members of the press, that was almost like, that was the target that was placed on their back. And so a lot of them are saying that we are not going out with those big press, jackets or anything like that anymore. We'll keep the press pass, on our person, but to visibly identify ourselves as members of the press, really for the first time, certainly in my career, is yeah, it's a dangerous proposition. So it's a weird space we're in right now. Well, anybody else? I think we're almost at the end of our time here. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Jordan, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the rest of you for having me. I hope you learned a little something.
Absolutely. It was definitely a great presentation, very informative. And I think we all learned a lot of stuff. So we really appreciate you coming over and talking to us.
You are very, very welcome. Well, have a great rest of your weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
You
And
betcha.
yeah, for everyone else, stay tuned. Our next event is going to be at the end of March. So we will send out an email when we have that all set up. So yeah,
Right.
thank you everyone for coming. And thank you, Mike.
Thank
You
you, Mike.
betcha.
And
See you
also,
all.
Jeff, stay on 2 minutes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.